Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Jennifer Duke.
Good morning.
Now, Jen, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast 5, which is the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still keep it to 5 minutes because it wouldn't be the Fast 5 if we didn't. But we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story. We'll pick out a sleeper story, which is one that you probably might not be paying much attention to, but you should. And then our favourite story as well. So let's jump into it with the biggest story of the week. Look, I'll go first on this one if that's right, because Qantas, I talked about it last week. It was actually the biggest story of last week. It's the biggest story again this week. And there was a lot that kind of led into this week. Very, very quick recap. Qantas had a record $2.5 billion profit. Alan Joyce was at a Senate committee on the cost of living and high airfares. The government blocked Qatar Airways from having extra flights. That would have pushed airfares down. There was a backflip on an expiry date for hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID credits. Then the ACCC took federal court action against Qantas over cancelled flights that they kept selling tickets on. Heaps of stuff going on, heaps of brand damage. And then this week, the reason why it was the biggest story this week was CEO Alan Joyce pulled the pin 2 months early, should have been basically doing his farewell tour. Instead, he's having to hand the keys to the airline over to Vanessa Hudson early, 2 months early, really just to stem the bleeding. Vanessa Hudson now has a massive job to do to restore public trust in the brand. It has slipped from one of the most trusted companies in Australia to one languishing a long way down the list. I think everybody wants her to succeed, but this has been one of the most bruising weeks in the airline's history, and let's hope it is the turning point.
Definitely. And my biggest story of the week was China's economy and the significant implications for Aussie businesses who may find their biggest export market running out of steam, but new opportunities opening up. So this week, Treasurer Jim Chalmers was unveiling the big June quarter GDP results. And as he did that, he was warning that China's slowdown is having a substantial impact on the economy. And this week, there was an Australia-China high-level dialogue, the first since the talks stalled in 2020, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has since been at the East Asia Summit. On the sidelines, he met with China's premier for what he described as a frank and constructive discussion about areas of shared interest and getting rid of remaining trade impediments. But it was other major announcements that were particularly interesting. So they announced plans to spend tens of millions of dollars as a starter investment in Southeast Asia to build connections between the businesses there and ours in Australia. It's a big export opportunity waiting to be fully explored. And now he's at the G20 in India, which is another major market we've yet to make the most of.
All right. Two big stories there. Let's go on to most remarkable. I'll keep mine very brief. It's remarkable, I think, that the ATO has had to come out twice this week and warn about people doing kind of dodgy things with tax, really. The first was directed at the nation's 2 million landlords to make sure they're not making any kind of dodgy deductions. A bit of a reminder there because property investors' tax refunds seem to be going up. The second one, the truly remarkable one, was a message from the tax commissioner who said he was seeing more small businesses deliberately avoiding paying tax and superannuation, kind of treating their debts to the ATO as a free loan. The ATO has owed a whopping $50 billion in unpaid tax debt, and small business makes up $33 billion of that. I just think it's remarkable that we've now had these two warnings this week on top of all the normal kind of warnings about what the ATO is cracking down on.
It is remarkable. And what was also remarkable is that women are finally getting major leadership roles in economic institutions and private businesses. So one of the big ones of the week was Danielle Wood being announced as the next chair of the Productivity Commission. It's the first time a woman has led the commission in Australia's history. At the same time, Michelle Bullock is about to step up as the Reserve Bank's first female governor. And we've got a female chair of the ACCC for the first time ever. We also had Vanessa Hudson obviously taking over as Qantas CEO. That's their first woman in its century-long history. And it was only in May that Coles appointed a female CEO, as did Telstra last year.
All right, jumping through to the sleeper story now, so one that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves. What was it for you?
So Google's unveiled that it will force verified advertisers to disclose if their election campaign ads use inauthentic or synthetic depictions of people or events. Basically, if advertisers use AI or other creative tech to fake something, they'll have to disclose it. This is all thankfully way ahead of the US election in 2024, but this issue of AI and deepfakes being used to manipulate our views and share fake news is going to get increasingly difficult. It's going to be a headache for policymakers, in particular, who are trying to keep up with the new tech and its effects on elections. In the US, there's an AI forum happening next week, which the Financial Times reports will be a starting point for legislation, and Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and a bunch of Google and Microsoft execs are all going along.
Favorite story, just a quick one. We talked a lot recently about India's successful moon landing. They're not stopping at the moon. They're now heading to the sun. They launched a rocket this week that is going to take 4 months to get there. And when it does, it'll be orbiting a spot in space where there's 4 other spacecraft. But they're doing a lot of work there to study the sun's magnetic field and how it affects Earth's atmosphere and the violent solar storms that it can create. And that is obviously very important for Earth and for Earth's economy because of the economic impacts of some of these solar events. Look, I'm going to admit it is a little bit of a nerdy kind of favorite story, but I think it is just fascinating what is going on in space and the fact that we really have a new space race going on.
It is fascinating what's going on in space, but also in Spain, where in August there was an incident where 50,000 litres of olive oil was nicked from a mill. That's according to Bloomberg, and it was worth about 500,000 euros. So the price of olives and olive oil has gone up heaps because of a serious drought in Europe right now. And in Australia, there's been a sharp rise in copper theft. So the problem is that everyone is trying to transition to renewable energy sources, and copper is a major component. Copper prices are going up sharply, including for scrap copper. This year, there have been stories from Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales of wire being ripped out of farm equipment, building sites, electricity substations, and even NBN connections. So it's these volatile prices that we're seeing globally as we grapple with climate change and try to transition our economies to mitigate it, and the ways it's driving unexpected behaviour like theft.
5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks so much, Michael.
That was Jennifer Duke, economics correspondent at Capital Brief. We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Don't forget to hit follow and join us online on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.